Under the relentless buzz of fluorescent tubes in a Lotte mart, tucked into Gangnam's labyrinthine sprawl, where December's early dusk bled through frost-rimed windows like a half-faded filter. A trembling 15-second video fractured the late afternoon hush on December 10th, 2025, just hours ago at 2:47 p.m. local time. It framed a compact form swallowed by a black hoodie and white knit beanie, posture curved inward as if shielding a fragile melody from the chill seeping off the tiled floors, threading the produce section with the measured steps of one testing the elasticity of reclaimed solitude. Trailing at a discreet arm's length loomed a sturdier outline clad head to toe in black, crisp shirt, fitted pants, polished shoes, a steadfast presence more attuned to perimeter sweeps than price tags, while a woman in a muted rose coat lingered a beat behind, her smartphone tilted with the subtlety of a concealed compass. The footage, raw and handheld from an anonymous angle, detonated across Weverse and X by 4 p.m., racking up 1.8 million views in the first wave. Suga sightings spiking like a synth swell, army pouring over pixels for traces of the producer who'd dissolved into enlistment's grey haze, only to resurface as a more veiled architect of intimacies. What drew Min Yoongi, BTS's nocturnal wordsmith, into this tableau of scuffed carts and vapour-shrouded crates, and precisely what had he slipped into that unassuming canvas tote dangling from his wrist? The reel cycled in feverish edits, devotees magnifying the subtle hollows of his cheeks under the beanie's woolen fringe, the ghost of his 2023 shoulder mend flickering through the hoodie's drape as he extended a gloved hand toward a mound of key limes. Absent was the phalanx of handlers, or the pre-service swarm that turned outings into gauntlets. Instead, this lean trio wove through clusters of bundled shoppers, bartering over burdock roots and harried commuters snatching meal kits. 5 months post his June 21st discharge, an understated ripple marked by a lone Weverse dispatch of his cat Holly pouring at dawn light, inscribed, "Back on familiar ground, softer than the stories promised. Thanks for the pause." The anticipation had crested for tempests, maybe Agus D's next dispatch, etched with service-forged reveries, or the septet's full resurgence claiming Glastonbury's 2026 stage with HYYH evolutions that vowed to defrost the interlude's chill. He materialized in shards instead, a November whisper engineering TXT's bridge drops, timbre roughed in the liner notes, a Dawn Weverse audio from his Daegu roots, teasing a guitar lick that rustled like frost on bamboo. Yet the Min Yoongi Center at Yonsei Severance anchored his reticences, Dawn's rigging haptic feedback loops in isolation pods, Noon's debating clinicians on how glitchy hi-hats might reroute aversion cascades. Within those muffled chambers, Yoongi unearthed reinvention's cadence, distant from acclaim's insistent thrum. Still, the snippet unearthed an atavistic tug, a shared breath held after his seclusion's release, fan archives ignited with analytical fervour. The lime stack's locale implied whim, not mandate. The tote's faint contour suggested bulk beyond fruit, maybe instant jajangmyeon for dawn edits, or that elusive samjang he'd invoked in a 2021 Run BTS episode. Unease threaded the discourse, veined with guardianship. Did this infringe, yet another adherent breaching the perimeter he'd painstakingly mended after demobilization? His conscription arc, civic duties at a Mapo welfare outpost, then assembly line shifts cataloguing discards, had unmasked him, bereft of podiums to cloak frailties, merely the cadence of stacking towels and charting intakes for spectrum-spanning adolescent cohorts. It sculpted a figure hungering for the impromptu, the corporeal affirmations of routine, grinding beans in a least Itaewon loft, peddling bukchon paths at first light, or, as Hybe murmurs escaped, orchestrating impromptu taco spreads for the centre's pioneer group, coaching them through Ableton until chuckles overrode the grid. As twilight deepened into the hand's inky fold, the video's architect, a 26-year-old illustrator called Sumin, who'd crouched amid a guava display for the frame, grappled with the repercussion in her Sinsa Dong Garrett. Her device thrummed like a coiled spring, alerts cascading from handles she'd nurtured covertly. At Yongi Fragments, a chronicle mapping his after-service trails from hazy Gimpo glimpses to authenticated center galas. Sumin hadn't schemed the seas. She'd been provisioning her pantry, magnetized by the guard's frame cleaving the flow like a courteous boulder. Then the cap's signature droop. Yungi halted at the limes, leather-clad digits, sleek, unflashy, sifting the emerald spheres, claiming 6 with the discernment of a mixer balancing lows. The escort, a burly fixture called Park from Hybe's detail roster, anchored at the fixture's flank, gaze darting to the butcher case's sterile sheen where pork bellies shimmered like illicit tablature. The woman, unmasked soon as Yungi's Aunt Misuk, steadied a hamper of pomelos and chives, her spare palm bracing his arm through a transient arm ache, echo of the operation that truncated D-Day's coda. What the initial cut veiled, but Sumin's prolonged reel, disseminated incognito by evening, disclosed was the venture's subdued aim. No starlets forage for foie gras or heirloom varietals. Yungi skirted the upscale flanks, angling to the eco nook where key limes huddled with kaffir pears and pomelo kin, their rinds etched like whispered codas. He leaned toward Misuk, murmur a subdued growl swallowed by the clamour, noting the cohort's tactiles, crave that zing to pierce the lavender drift. The centre's Yuletide atelier beckoned, a December 18th gathering, fusing auditory remediation with wintry builds. Circles where spectrum-shifting tweens blended aromatics into nebulizers, bouquets calibrated to tether drifting cognitions. Yungi, perpetual transmuter, had beta-tested a verdant surge regimen, limes rasped across heated terracotta, mists unfurling like refrain teasers to tether sensory surges. It germinated from an October pilot when a 10-year-old called Ji-hoon, gaze fracturing like prismed glass amid a percussion ring, gripped a lime segment till its essence glazed his grip, mooring him past the peak. Beyond aroma, he'd relayed to Bang Si-hyuk via encrypted memo. It's the rupture. Evidence, the terrain holds firm. The disclosure cascaded, alchemizing digital storm into a lattice of resonance. By 7 p.m., Resest for Zen surged with the sighting, army aggregating formulas, lime-laced mochi for atelier melds, pomelo elixirs laced with kinetic flex for optic anchors. Su Min, grazed by the uproar's edge, fielded a discreet reverse prod from Yungi's circle. Not censure, but a subdued nod, paired with atelier passes for area artisans. It mirrored the interplay, etching his sphere since inception, adherents as allies, not onlookers, their watchfulness a honed edge that hewed room for his fortified essence. Misuk, in a veiled kin relay online, recounted the jaunt's overture, a pre-dawn ping from Yungi, inflection laced with wear, Ioni, the flats echoing without provisions, Mart run before the gridlock grips. Their tie, hammered in Daegu harvests, plucking quinces from Kin's orchard, emerged in these observances. Her patrolling lanes as he dwelled on grains, a stand-in for the seclusion once igniting tapes, like people, Pontotu. Profounder, the encounter flayed strata of a figure charting re-entry's jagged currents. After release, Yungi had unburdened to Jimin over a Yongsan trail trek, strides aligning like overlays, how the duty's discipline echoed, a spectral crave for timetabled empties. Provision quests turned elixir, hampers as pallets for volition, assaying kiwis for yield, parlaying vendors on doenjang vats, each pick a stanza defying renown's libretto. The limes evoked deeper, a salute to his youth's fringe affinities, the verdant bite summoning juvenile soaks where calamansi husks eased dermatitis flares, a perceptual ploy pre-labels claimed form. In the centre's sphere, it bloomed as syllabus. Forums merging gleaning allegories with rhymes, youths reaping oral yields from sequences. Jungi's steerage, a span from his August D. Blaze to collective nurture. Bang, overseeing from Hybe's nerve centre, traced echoes to the ensemble's dawn. 7 lads pillaging marts for Ramyun halls, transfiguring dearth into dirges. This foray, prosaic at skin, affirmed the swerve. From loner eclipsed by qualms to custodian of mutual respites. As December's zenith approached, the snippet's tremors interlaced the societal weave, inciting undulations past amethyst tides. K Entertainment dispatches passed it as paradigm. Luminaries recouping the quotidian, a riposte to the sector's unyielding veneer, where off-script instants commodify into virals. In Incheon tea houses, veterans traded yarns of Jungi's nascent grinds, shelving sundries at district depots to bank rough cuts, while overseas pods echoed the bounty, verdant fundraisers bankrolling centre outreaches from Sydney to Stockholm. It rendered the apparatus approachable, underscoring that devotion's blaze, when reigned, cultivates not tumult, but ties. Army weavers spinning caps for atelier wards, aping his ivory helm's muted bulwark. Sumin, carving her vein as an emergent Foley crafter, pitched in that eve, her gadget now conduit for logging not peaks, but progress. A pre-teen draping lime-grate sonics over a rhythm, timbre firming to chant. In the cascade's lull, as flurries veined soul's lintels like unrhymed refrains, Jungi circled to the depot solo, satchel weighted with mandarins and narrative bends for the ensuing cut. The limes, flayed and infused, scented the centre's corridors through the atelier, essences entwining with nascent strains of a joint hymn, stammering, then synced. Mi-suk observed from the periphery, her rose garb draped on a stool, as Ji-hoon proffered a sliver to him, nectar linking their holds in tacit accord. No lenses then, merely the heft of persistence, not the pursuit, but the curation, not the snare, but the forging of realms where each modest clasp births something keener, lucent, indelibly self. Dawn's tentative gold threaded the atelier's high windows the next morning, casting elongated shadows across the low tables where citrus peels curled like discarded verses, their volatile oils still whispering into the air. Jungi arrived before the first arrivals, sleeves rolled to his elbows, a portable diffuser humming faintly as he calibrated its output, testing bursts that mimicked a track's build, sharp then sustaining, designed to escort fragile attentions through the session's swells. Ji-hoon was the early one, backpack slung low, his sneakers scuffing softly against the padded mats as he claimed a spot by the window, fingers already tracing invisible patterns on the sill. The boy's gaze, often a mosaic of fleeting fixations, locked briefly on the zester Jungi set down, its serrated wheel glinting like a microphoned edge. "That cuts the fog," Ji-hoon said, not quite to him but aloud, the words landing with the weight of a sampled hook. Jungi nodded. No fanfare, just a shared breath before the room filled. 11 others filtering in with guardians, the space transforming from sterile sanctuary to a canvas of controlled chaos, where maracas rattled tentatively, and a girl named Yoon Chae layered glitter onto lime slices, her laughter fracturing like hi-hat accents. The workshop unfolded in waves, not rigid blocks, a circle for scent mapping, where participants paired peels with sound clips from Jungi's tablet. Tart bursts synced to minor keys, evoking the ache in the last, but refracted through possibility. Mi-suk lingered in the antechamber, brewing ginger tea in thermoses that fogged the glass partitions, her presence a quiet metronome to the hum within. She'd seen Yoongi like this before, in Daegu attics where he'd tinker with Casio keyboards until strings snapped, emerging hollow-eyed but alight, as if composition were confession. Now, it was communal, his cues drawing out a pre-teen's freestyle over a citrus drone, verses tumbling about, worlds that squeeze too tight, then let go. The guard, Park, stationed outside with a thermos of his own, scrolled idly through the viral clip on his phone, now at 4.2 million views, dissected in threads that veered from adoration to armchair therapy. Those limes aren't random. It's his way of saying service taught him to flavour the voids. Yoongi caught a glimpse through the door crack, a flicker of wry amusement crossing his face before he refocused, adjusting a volume knob as Yoonche's track peaked, her fists unclenching in rhythm. By midday, the atelier exhaled its cohort, guardians murmuring thanks laced with questions. How to replicate the diffusers at home, what apps might echo the beats. Yoongi fielded them with clipped precision, his voice a low register that invited without demanding, then retreated to a corner stool, notebook splayed open to sketches of neural maps intertwined with chord progressions. The limes had worked their subtle sorcery. Fewer meltdowns than the vanilla trials, engagement metrics spiking like a chart climber. But it was the unquantifiable that lingered, a drawing Ji-hoon left behind, a lime halved into jagged suns, captioned in blocky print. Cuts the dark open. Mi-suk pocketed it as they packed up, her hand brushing Yoongi's in the silent exchange of family shorthand. Pride, unvoiced but viscous. Outside, the snow had thickened, blanketing Gangnam's avenues in a hush that muffled the distant honks, turning the city into a vast unmastered reverb chamber. Word of the outing's ripple reached the broader current that afternoon, as Army's decentralized hive mind spun the clip into activism's silk. Pop-up citrus kits at fan meets in Manila and Mexico City, recipes crowdsourced for spectrum-friendly feasts, hashtags morphing from hashtag Sugar Grocery Glow to hashtag Zest the Spectrum, netting pledges for centre satellites in underserved wards. Sumin, the illustrator whose frame had sparked it all, posted her own extension, a digital collage of limes fracturing into piano keys, tagged with Yoongi's handle. Her caption a quiet query. What everyday anchor pulls you through the noise? Share below. Let's build the playlist. Comments flooded like an unfiltered drop. Tales of chamomile for panic spirals, sea glass for tactile tethers. One user recounting a sibling's breakthrough with mandarin peels during meltdowns. Another proposing collabs with global herbalists for August D's next sonic salve. It wasn't mere engagement. It was echo chamber turned amplifier. Fans not consuming but contributing, their stories threading into the centre's evolving archive. A living liner note to Yoongi's quiet insurgency. In the evening's fold, as he cycled back to his loft, tote lighter now, save for a stray pomelo rolling like a forgotten measure, Yoongi paused at a crosswalk, the intersection's neon bleeding into slush. A cluster of teens across the way, earbuds in, mimed his old dechwita gestures, their laughter a counterpoint to the traffic's drone. He didn't wave, but the sight settled something. A reminder that visibility's cost could yield unforeseen yields, not just scrutiny, but solidarity, the viral snare loosening into shared script. Back home, Holly greeted him with a figure-8 weave around his ankles, the apartment's speakers murmuring a rough cut from the morning session, Ji-hoon's voice, nascent and unpolished, over a lime-scented loop. Yoongi sank into his chair, fingers ghosting keys, layering in a bridge that whispered of persistence's small victories. The world outside buzzed with interpretations, but here, in the curation's core, it distilled to this: a man, a cat, a half-eaten fruit, and the infinite remixes of what it means to hold on, to let go, to invite others into the mix. What slice of ordinary magic reshapes your rhythm, Drop it in the comments. Your note might just be the harmony we've been sampling for.